get straight into the PowerShell script now and how to create a virtual machine using PowerShell. So we're going to do this within Windows PowerShell ISE, and the main reason for that is so that we can go through it step by step and explain the different components in the script. So I'm just going to go in here and open up this Azure virtual machine script now, and you can see that we've got it here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to actually connect to our Azure tenant from within PowerShell. So hopefully that's something new that you can learn from this video as well. And we're going to do that by using the add Azure RM account commandlet. So we're just going to, obviously we're not going to run the script as a whole right now. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how it connects to your Azure tenant, how to select your subscription, then we'll go through the script and then we'll run it after that. So just going to highlight the add Azure RM account command and just going to run that. And obviously you can see there it's going to pop up and prompt me for my Microsoft Azure credentials. So these are the exact same credentials that I would use to log into the Azure portal for my organization. Just put my email address in. It's a work account and my password. So you can see here that we're connected to our Azure environment, and they've got the tenant ID, our default subscription ID is in there as well, and the default subscription name. But like ourselves, a lot of organizations will have multiple subscriptions. So to first of all be able to see your subscriptions, we just want to run this command here, the get Azure RM subscription command, and that'll show all subscriptions available within your tenant. So you can see we've got quite a lot here for what we use for testing and just different environments that we've got in our tenant. So all you need to do is you just find your relevant subscription and just take a copy of the subscription ID, so that then we can select the subscription that we're going to be working on and that we're going to be creating the resources in, and that the resource that we create are going to be charged to. So I've already got my subscription ID here, so I'm just going to run this command now, and then that'll put everything within the context, everything that runs in the context of this subscription now. So there we go, we've just selected this subscription ID, and you can see there that it's just confirming that it's been selected there. Now on to actually creating the virtual machine. So using this script here, which again will be available after the video, it'll be available as a download link, so you can grab a copy of the script and modify it and run it yourself in your own environment. So the first thing we're going to do is going to set the variables. So I'm just going to run through these one by one. So first we need to we're going to have to create a resource group. If we haven't already got one, if we've got one, we still need to define what the resource group we're going to be creating the virtual machine in. So here I've just called the resource group virtual machines 02. We need to define the location of whereabouts we're going to be creating the virtual machine. If you're not sure exactly of the different locations available in Azure, if you just run this command here, if you look down the bottom, just run get-azure rm location. And you can see all of the different locations here, and you can use the display name in that variable there. As you can see, if I go find West Europe's just there, and I've just set in my variable. There we go. Then we're obviously going to have to create a virtual network. Again, the script can be modified if you've already got one to actually miss out the creation of the virtual network, but you still will need to define it so you know where you're creating the virtual machine. That goes for all of these variables in here. So this is where we would set our virtual network prefix. So this is a 192.168.0.0/16 prefix. So basically this virtual network can use both of these octets here. So we're going to have a lot of scope for a lot of subnets, which takes on the next variable, which is actually defining and creating a subnet within Azure. And we're just going to create a subnet of 192.168.99.0/24. So quite a simple standard subnet there. Then we have to define the name for our network security group. If you're not familiar with the network security groups in Azure, they're basically like a firewall that can be attached to either a virtual machine network interface directly or to a subnet directly as well, and that basically controls what traffic inbound and also outbound will be allowed in and out of the network. And then just a simple one is the virtual machine name, and we need to define a credential, and this credential here is the local administrator account on your virtual machine. So it's the first account you'll need to log in your virtual machine with. So we're just going to highlight all of our variables here. I'm just going to define them, and you can see that's popped up asking for the credential. So I'm just going to set this one to circle cloud test. I'm going to set the password. So that's our local administrator account on our virtual machine. So we can see there those variables have all been declared. The command ran successfully. If you look at the bottom of the screen here. Now we're just going to talk through each part of this script, and I'm not going to run these ones bit by bit. I'm going to talk you through them all and show you just how easy it is to create a machine by running it all at once and then getting the virtual machine created, and to show you how much time you would actually save by doing this. And also you'd end up with a really standard configuration across all your virtual machines as you create them. And it is genuinely much quicker than using the Azure portal. First one, we need to create a resource group. So this command here, the new Azure RM resource group command, it's going to use our resource group name variable, and we're also going to use our location variable to define the name of that resource group and where we'd like it to be created. This next bunch of commands here are all network related. So basically what we're going to do is we need to create a subnet configuration. So we're not actually creating the subnet in this bit, we're just setting the configuration, which will then be put into the command for the virtual network, and we'll create the subnet as part of the virtual network command. So what we're doing here is we're basically saying, yeah, with a new virtual network subnet configuration, what the name we'd like that subnet to have, and also what subnet address we'd like to have, which we defined earlier up here, which is 192.168.99.0/24. The next command will actually create our virtual network, and it will create our subnet. So again, it's going to use the variables that we've already set, which is the new Azure virtual network command, and using the variables, the resource group variable, the location variable, the VNet name variable, VNet prefix, and the subnet config, which we've just created with this command here. And as part of this, we're actually going to be creating a virtual network variable, which we'll be using later on in these commands. So after that, we're going to create a public IP address. So a public IP address is the best way to explain it. Probably it isn't actually part of the virtual machine configuration. It's a separate component which is then attached to the network interface, which is then attached to the virtual machine. So this will be bound to a variable as well once we've created it. So the command basically, it'll just be saying we're going to create a new Azure public IP address in the same resource group, in the same location, and we're going to use a static IP address, and the name is going to be a combination of my public DNS and then it's going to have some random characters in the name as well. So that's the public IP address that the virtual machine will route out on. Also, we'll be able to send inbound traffic to it and be able to connect to it using remote desktop, which I'll show you at the end of this once we've run the script and created the virtual machine. So the next step is obviously we need to actually create we need to set a rule for when we create our network security group. So the first one and the most important one, so you can actually get on and remote control your machine, is an Rdp rule. So what we're actually doing here, and you can do this, it'd be really useful if you are creating like a standard configuration for your virtual machines to always allow the same ports. For example, if you need to control from one certain office, or all your virtual machines need certain management ports open, then this can be done as part of your standard configuration template with PowerShell. All we're doing here is we're just basically creating a new network security group rule, and we're going to call the rule Rdp, which again can be called anything that you like or anything that suits your business and your requirements. We define the protocol, so this rule is only TCP. It's only an inbound rule. We set the priority, which you'd see in the portal. You'd see where all the rules are and the priority and which ones would be applied first. We can set our source address prefix here, but we're going to allow any source address. We're going to allow any source port range, and the destination address prefix, again, we're just going to allow it to go any because we're only creating one virtual machine, but we could lock it down to one particular IP address within Azure. We're going to set the port to the standard Rdp port, which is 3389, and of course we need to allow the traffic so we can actually connect to the virtual machine. So that will create that rule. Then this next command will actually create the network security group, and it will enter the rule here. So again, it'll use the same resource group, it'll use the same location. The name will be what we've set earlier, the network security group name, as you can see up here. And the security rules it will get from the command we just ran, which is this one here. So what this command is going to do, it's going to create the network security group, and it's going to add the rule that we've just created for Rdp. The next command, we're going to create a virtual network card and associate it with a public IP address. So we're going to create the network interface, and then we're going to bind it to the network security group we just created, but also the public IP address. So then that means that both those components will be linked to the network card, which will then be attached to the virtual machine later on in our configuration down here. So what it's going to do, it's going to actually bind it's going to create all the network interface configuration to this variable here, $nick. And the type of parameters that we've got in here is very similar. We've got the resource group, the location, the subnet ID, which we've set already up here, the public IP address we want to assign to the virtual network card, and the network security group ID, which is set here. There we go. So we're almost there now, and then we'll be able to run the script. So what the next section of commands, which is, as you can see, is quite small, is going to be the actual virtual machine, setting up the virtual machine configuration, how we'd like the virtual machine to be set up, and then actually creating it. So if we have a look here, what we're doing is we're just declaring another variable here for the virtual machine config, and we're going to say what the virtual machine name is, which we defined earlier as test VM. Then we're going to say what size virtual machine we'd like this virtual machine to be. So what spec, or how much disk space, how much CPU, and how much RAM we'd like to assign to this virtual machine. If you're unsure of the virtual machine sizes, you can find them in the Azure portal, or you can run this command here at the bottom. Get Azure RM VM size, and then if you just format that in a table. Okay, sorry, 1 second. So what we also need to do is we actually need to define the location as well, because do have different virtual machine sizes available in different locations in Azure. So we want to be looking in West Europe. So you can see here in this table all of the different sizes, quite a lot, but it'll just quickly tell you the size and name, which is what we need to reference in the virtual machine config, the number of cores, the number of memories, the size of the operating disks, and how many maximum disks we can have on the virtual machine as well. So we went for a standard A2, so just to clarify, that'll have 2 cores, it'll have 3.5 gigs of memory, we can have a maximum of 4 disks in there, and I think it's like 128 gig disk that equates to there. So that's the virtual machine sizes. We then need to define what we want the computer name to be, so what we actually want the Windows computer name to be. The administrator credential, which we defined earlier, is defined in here too. And we also need to just set the server image name in here. Again, those can all be found in the Azure portal, but if you just want the latest version of Windows Server, you just define it in here, set the offer, and also set the SKU as well. So we're going to go for a Server 2016 Data Center Edition using the latest version, latest updates, latest service packs, and also critically we're going to actually add the virtual network interface that we created earlier to the virtual machine config. So just running this command won't actually create the virtual machine. It'll just set the configuration that we then import when we want to create the virtual machine, which is the very simple command underneath. So all this command is doing here, it's just saying we want to create a new virtual machine in this resource group, and we want it to be created in this location. And the configuration we want to use is our $VM config, which we've just defined here. So this command is one that we're going to use after we've created the virtual machine, just to get the public IP address so that we can connect to the remote desktop, to the server via remote desktop. So I'm going to leave that out at the moment. Actually, we can run it. It's no harm running it. So all we're going to do now is we're actually going to run the script from top to bottom. Again, I'm just going to enter my Azure credentials just because I am running it from the top to bottom. You don't necessarily have to do this again. So I can authenticate. This thing will show me out all the subscriptions, and it's going to select the Azure subscription as well. It's going to ask for the virtual machine credential again. So Circle Cloud Test and our password. Let's press OK there, and the script will carry on running. And so it's just going to perform all the configuration now, and then it's going to create the virtual machine. So I'd probably expect this maybe take anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes to actually run the configuration, set all the parameters, and then create the virtual machine. But the beauty of using PowerShell to do this is you can just set it off. The work you need to do doesn't take less than that. It takes probably a minute or two. Then you can let it run, let it create the virtual machine while you do other things. Okay, so we can see now that the command has completed. You can see just by the fact that it has an error. That's one of the great things about PowerShell is if you have got an error, then it's worked and it's been successful. But also you can see it has run that last command which I mentioned, this one here, which will give us the public IP address straight away for the virtual machine. So I'm just going to take a copy of the IP address now, and I'm just going to open up remote desktop. Enter the IP address, press connect, and you can see our network security group rule has worked because it's obviously asking us for our credentials. So it's allowed the port 3389 through the network security group rule and into the network interface of the virtual machine. So I'm just going to enter our credentials, our local administrator credentials for the machine, and our password. Press OK. Just accept the certificate warning. It's the first time I'm connecting to this machine because it's brand new. And you can see there we've got a Windows Server 2016 virtual machine. So you can see we've got the virtual machine here now. Just to sort of show you, if we go to, let's bear with this, still loading. So as you can see there, we have our Windows Server. It's been created there in Azure using PowerShell. It's got the name that we set, the test VM. Obviously we've just used the same password to log in. And if I actually open up the spec of the machine, we should be able to see, as you can see there, 3.5 gig. It's got 1 core, and the disk, you can see there, 126 gigabytes the disk is. So it's exactly as we configured it in the script. And you'll also be able to see in the Azure portal, if we just go into our resource groups, then go into virtual machines 02, we'll see our resources there, including our virtual machine, our network security group, our public IP address, and our network interface card as well, and our operating system disk. So I'm just clicking here, and we can see the virtual machine there. So, like I said before, the script what we've just used there, that will be available if you look in the details section below I'll use the link on the screen to be navigated to where you can download the script from, so you can use it yourself, to hopefully speed up your deployments. And also, if you're not familiar with our content, again, if you head over our resource library, then you'll be able to get access to a lot more content like this to teach you a few things on how to use Azure and how to use Office 365. So yeah, just head over our resource library.